Welcome to the topic Tactics of the Mind. At some point in life, we all do play some games. Those are called the tactics of the mind. Do you go into argumentative mode? Do you start blaming anything and everything except yourself? Do you try to change the subject? So, are you playing a generality game? Or do you apply sarcasm? Now, let us see some very unhealthy psychological strategies used by the mind. Be aware of it and try not to use them. And the psychic energies may get into conflict. In such a scenario, we might experience these three unhealthy psychological strategies. Number one is conversion disorder. Number two is hypochondriasis. Number three is somatization. So, what is conversion disorder? If the conflicts of the mind is presented as a physical symptom like numbness or jerks, we call them as a conversion disorder. Remember, this happens at an unconscious level. If the whole focus shifts towards the self and the self starts feeling there is some serious ongoing illness, no matter what tests they do, they simply do not believe that they do not have an illness. Their whole focus gets preoccupied with this one single thought of having a serious illness. Now, there is another situation called somatization. Here, what happens is the negative feelings towards the incident or towards the person is shifted towards negative feelings towards the self, and the person experiences pain or anxiety or some illness. So, these are all psychological strategies which are very, very unhealthy. If you have any one of them, just be aware of that and come out of it. Why does the mind do such things? It is because the intelligence is perverted. It is called Prajnaparadam in Ayurveda. A perverted intelligence amplifies the emotions, magnifies it to such an extent that the mind becomes helpless there. So the treatment begins with the correction of the intelligence, which is not an easy task. Treatment and management in such cases is not easy. A multidimensional, customized approach with constant monitoring is very much essential in such a scenario. Because according to Ayurveda, these people are Alpasattva persons. So we need to increase the Sattva Bala, the strength, the mental strength of such persons, and it takes time. But why does the mind do this? It is because the mind wants to maintain emotional homeostasis or balance of the emotions that is happening within. Defense mechanisms happen at an unconscious level, mostly involuntary. We have no control over them. And over time, it becomes a habit. So at some point, we just need to break these. Now, let us focus on some immature defense mechanisms or coping strategies. We might think by hearing the term immature, these are meant for children or for young adolescents, but unfortunately, even adults do take shelter in such defense mechanisms at some point in life. Let us see the immature defense mechanisms. The very first immature defense mechanism is simply acting out. As the emotion comes as an impulse from the unconscious mind, it is just acted out without thinking of the consequences or without being aware of such a behavior. That is called acting out. Number two is fantasy. As the term suggests, the mind has a tendency to go into a fantasy sort of world so that the person is away from reality. It is like going into an imaginary world to resolve external or internal conflicts. Because in the imaginary or in the fantasy world, everything is wonderful and beautiful. So the person takes shelter in his own imagination. That is called fantasy. Number three, idealization. This is quite different. To idealize the person as well as their actions. The person will attribute more qualities than the actual qualities possessed by such a person. Number four is passive aggression. Aggression is not active, it is passive, meaning it is indirect. The anger or dislike towards the person who is involved in bringing this potential harm to the self is treated passively. For example, it can be like procrastinating to act. Number five is projection. This is a very, very common one. We project something like our thoughts and feelings onto others who are not even aware of such a thing. So the self's thoughts and feelings are projected as others' thoughts and feelings, and in that process, this mind escapes from the guilt or whatever that is experienced because of such thoughts and feelings. Let us focus on mature defense mechanisms. Emotionally healthy people are considered as matured. So, the defense mechanisms used by such persons are termed as mature defense mechanisms. For example, humor. If in any situation you're able to bring in humor, you're able to laugh at your own self, that is one of the biggest defense mechanisms that your mind can help you with. Second is altruism. It simply means diverting all the negativity into something very positive and constructive in terms of the society. Doing some humanitarian service, altruism also brings lots of personal satisfaction. So, that is one of the highest defense mechanisms as well. Another beautiful defense mechanism is anticipation. We anticipate about the possible future negativities that can happen and we stay prepared for that from this moment. That comes from a matured state of mind. Another beautiful defense mechanism is thought suppression. The thought that is bringing anxiety is suppressed momentarily and just pushed aside for some time. Later, when the mind is ready to deal with it, it picks the thought and addresses the same. There is a reality. I do not know how to cope up with the reality, so my mind comes up with some mechanisms. Those are called defense mechanisms. These are basically mental operations. Some of them are healthy, some of them are unhealthy. For example, when you cannot bear something, you immediately convert the energy into something that is useful to you. So you channelize the energy into a constructive channel, that is sublimation. Another common defense mechanism is withdrawal. As the term suggests, we try to withdraw from situations that are unacceptable to the self. Next one is denial. This usually happens when something is very unacceptable to the self. It simply denies it at the first instance. Another defense mechanism is identification. We identify with the person who is more powerful than us. So we try to behave in such a way that we have all the attributes of that person. For example, you have fear towards a powerful figure and you try to be the same so that you are conquering your own fear. That is identification, which is not good as well. Another defense mechanism is repression. As the term suggests, we repress or we push down the emotions into a safe place and just lock it and keep it there. And we might think we have totally forgotten such an incident. This usually happens with childhood abuse or something that is very heartbreaking to the self. Repression simply means that it is out of our conscious mind, it is there deep in the unconscious mind. Every experience that a person goes through is stored within. Another defense mechanism is reaction formation. That is, we showcase something that is totally the opposite of what we feel or what we think. If we are angry towards a person, we show it as extreme kindness. That is reaction formation, which is not good as well because we are masking the emotion. So, that is it about defense mechanisms, which are nothing but the mental operations happening at an unconscious level involuntarily. The ego is unable to cope up with the reality of the situation. So, once the self rises to such an extent that it can cope up with any situation that is coming on its way, being emotionally stable, we no longer need these defense mechanisms, or we can use the mature defense mechanisms like humor, altruism, anticipation, or even sublimation. That's it. Thank you.